Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 280, which I've titled In a Haze because it's kind of been that way. Your comments are very welcome. Please remember that you can comment on our group on Ravelry, and there's a link in the show notes, or you can comment right where the show notes are, and that is at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. I think at this point most people are commenting on the group on Ravelry. In the warm thanks department, I want to thank Turbo Gal, who is still basically carrying on the good work in Minnesota and is not forgetting that the Minnesotans are still struggling. There was a considerable amount of job loss in Minneapolis because people were afraid to go in the streets to get to their jobs. And if the jobs weren't lost, the pay was. And so Turbo Gal reminds us, and I'm going to quote her, she's quoting someone who trained her, and it is, "We are the people we have been waiting for." This is in response to my strategy a few episodes back where I said, you have to get out there and do what you can do. And there's been so much confusion about that, about what we really can do. I am going to say it again here. 5 calls a day. I don't know if it's .com or .org, but you're big enough you can look that up. Donating blood, donating platelets, taking a first aid class, learning CPR, volunteering in your community, volunteering at your children's schools. There are 1,000,001 ways to be a part of what's going on. Reading to kids at the library, teaching volunteer classes on crafting. Get out there and be a part. So thank you, Turbo Gal, for acknowledging that. It means a lot to me. I also want to thank my listeners, as always, including my communities that are in this group, first and foremost, and also on Finch, on Reddit, and on the ground in the Santa Clarita and Antelope Valleys. If you look in the show notes, you will see my 2 burbs in Finch. They are currently in the land of Oz. One of them didn't get out of bed this morning. Also, if you're hearing noises, I have Minerva stretched across my lap. She just made a groaning noise. I don't know if the mic's going to pick it up, but if you heard a noise, that's her. Everybody needs a therapy cat, let me tell you. Meanwhile, you can see the information, the link to the information for Cognitive Fiber Retreat 12. It's right there in the show notes. It'll take you to the information thread on Ravelry. And also, you can see the information. It's scheduled for November 7th, 2026. And how to register is right there in the show notes. You're just going to send it to me via PayPal at the address in the show notes. Please pay at the time of registration. It's $10 whopping. It is not refundable. And again, we're still collecting for Loretta 1031's Crocheting Club. We're collecting donations of yarn and hooks. This is still ongoing. We had a great harvest of this at CFR 11.5, so we're hoping for CFR 12 we can refresh Loretta's kids' supplies. So, you're wondering what's on your hooks and needles, Gemma? Well, I finished sock number 1 of the Dizzy Laser Socks pair number 2. Now, in this particular pair, I'm again returning to the two colors I used for my last pair of Dizzy lasers. They're called Dizzy lasers because the yarn is from Dizzy Blonde and Laser Sheet. Just so we're clear about that. What you may have just missed is Minerva swept her tail across the arm of my chair and knocked off my recorder. Everybody needs a therapy cat. At any rate, I am finished the first sock of the new pair. Now, the previous pair I just did in a very plain stockinette. This time, because that brown is a little quiet, shall we say, in its variegation, I decided to do the leg of it at least in a blueberry waffle pattern. And again, this is a classic pattern. Normally, I would do the top of the foot in this as well, but I really wanted some popcorn knitting, as Jasmine Knitmore would call it, on that foot. So I just did the leg in the beautiful blueberry waffle pattern. For those of you who haven't gotten it yet, the blueberry waffle pattern is a 4-row repeat, 2 rows of stockinette, and then 2 rows of alternating knit 2, purl 2. I'm very, very fond of it. It makes an extremely handsome sock. When you have a yarn that is predominantly in one color, this is a really good sock pattern to consider. If you have a highly variegated yarn, that will hide the waffle pattern. So I would say you do this for a colorway that is predominantly one color. Okay, so I got that sock done. To be honest, I'm knitting like the wind on that, and I'll explain why. So I will tell you the second sock, I just put in the waist yarn for the heel, and I will be on to the foot. So the stash toss remains where it's been. 17 skeins in, 41 out. I have not yet counted these 2 skeins for sock yarn. I think I've said I'm going to take these 2 skeins and see if I can get 3 pairs of socks out of them. The next pair is pretty clearly going to be striped. And since I do top down, it will be striped down the leg and then as far down the foot as I can get it to go. What does that mean for the heel and the toe? It's a good question. I will probably stripe down the leg and then put in waist yarn for the heel, stripe into the foot, and then use one color for one heel and another color for the other heel, because that's how I rock and roll. And we'll see how much yarn I have left, if I can actually get a third pair out of this. No, I won't be doing shorty socks, as they're called. I don't like doing socks with short legs because my feet are shaped in such a way that socks tend to roll down into my shoes. If I don't put a long leg on my socks, it's just going to be horrible to wear. Okay, so the stash toss is 17 in, 41 skeins out for this year, going since January 1st, 2026. In the meantime, let's look at my other projects. I am still working on the second Melt the Ice hat. It's a good way down. I think I've got about 9 inches of ribbing. And I'm not sure how many inches I'm going for because I'm trying this baby on as I go. And I want to see if I can fold up the brim a little bit and then work my way up to the part where it goes into stockinette and tapers and then has a tassel. And I didn't like the original pattern for my head shape. It just didn't work out well. It was just a little too loose and floppy, even in ribbing. So I want to be able to fold up the brim on this one. So we will see how that goes. I recommend the Melt the Ice hat. I was noting that Turbo Gal, who mentioned that she's working for the people of Minnesota who are having ice problems still, even though it's not the main focus in our news, she is busily knitting these hats. They are popular and being worn in the colder climates. Mine, by the way, is in Rios, and the colorway is Sagittarius, Malabrigo Rios Sagittarius. I'm in love with it. I can't wait to make a sweater out of it. I think it'll make just a smashing long sleeve sweater or jumper. Okay, no work on the quilts or the spinning. So let's get down to a strategy. So I'm still thinking about panic and responsibility. I want to make clear, last week I was talking about how to help somebody who is wildly anxious or panicking. And I said it, but I'm going to say it again. If a person says they are panicking or anxious, That's what I'm talking about. What is the difference if a person says, I'm having chest pains? No, that's go to a hospital time. That's get them help as fast as you can. Now, some of us do get chest pains with our anxiety, and they can be ferocious. I remember reading a study a few years ago, and I haven't been able to follow up on it, that said that women in their 40s develop chest pain on the outside of their ribs and high up, up around their breasts. And it seems to be a women thing, not a men's thing. I would like to see more on that. I have not seen any follow-up on that. I would love to find out if that's been validated. But it does raise the point that anxiety can create chest pain. I'm going to say it clearly. When in doubt, you just go to a hospital. We don't risk people on heart attack potential. We just go to a hospital. When I was telling you last week about how to manage somebody who's anxious or panicking, I want to make clear that they are telling you they are anxious or they are panicking. I don't mean someone frozen in fear clutching their chest. However, this does lead back to Turbo Gal's comment and my strategy a few weeks ago. You really need a good first aid class, okay? That you shouldn't be using me as your only source for how do I know if someone's having a heart attack. I am not a medical doctor. I am a behavioral doctor. So while I'm pretty good at what I do for a living, let me tell you, you have to get medical training if you're going to do medical intervention. Don't ever pretend you know what you're doing if you don't and if you haven't been trained. So when in doubt, if you can't tell what this person's doing, it's time to go to a higher source of knowledge, okay? Or as I tell my supervisees constantly, if you're in a crisis, you get help immediately. You're never alone in a crisis. If you take CPR training, they're going to tell you, if you see a person collapse to the ground, you immediately call for help. In CPR, back when I was first taught it, you pointed to someone in the crowd and said, you call 911, say we may have a cardiac emergency or we may have a heart attack. In the meantime, you're yelling to the person who's down, are you okay? Can you hear me? Lady, are you okay? Sarah, are you okay? Okay? But what I am saying here does not replace a good first aid course. I'd recommend you go to the American Red Cross for this. And yes, I have to renew this. I'm not sure how many years we go these days. It used to be every 7 years, and I think I've been renewing it like every 3 years now. That's really important. Everybody should know this stuff. If you have teenagers in your family, they should know this stuff. Once your kid hits 14 or 15, you want to book them off into a Red Cross first aid course. People need to know this. It should be common education. Why it's not offered in our schools as a routine part of education, you got me. The other thing is I want to talk about your responsibility to help other people. You can't push yourself off on people. You need them to ask for the help. Now, there's all sorts of weird exceptions. I mean, we can sit here and cherry pick. Well, what if I see a person collapse and they can't ask for help? Yeah, I think we all know the answer. Get help. But what I'm going to say is if you are doing any kind of behavioral intervention for somebody who's having a mood problem, they are depressed or they are sad or they are panicking, whatever. This is a voluntary thing. I don't go out on the streets and just grab people and say, hey, you want some free therapy? What a concept. And ethically speaking, we don't even do that with our families. Believe me when I tell you that is for our protection as well as their protection. I have learned over the years, believe me, you just don't want to do therapy on your own family. Doctors don't treat their own families except in an emergency. There's a really good reason for that. Believe me, the bias you feel is real. Okay, so I want to point out that you have to help people where you can, and you have to learn where you can. That there are people saying, no, leave me alone, I don't need your help. There is the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I have gone out to work an event of mass destruction. I'm going to say that carefully. And you have a crowd of people that were ordered into the room by their employer. You must go to this session with this nice psychologist and her team. And there's one person sitting there going, I don't want to be here. Yeah, we actually get them out of the room. We do not traumatize people. We can't tell. If that person is saying, I don't want to be here because I'm so traumatized, I certainly don't want my team to push them over the edge. Okay? That you can't make a person accept help. And it can be very, very difficult. And I remember years ago, I can't remember her name. There was a really good podcast by a social worker. And I liked her because she was a lot less dire when she talked about her strategies. And she was very, very good at it. And I'm sorry I can't remember her name. But she interviewed me. And we both had a good laugh when we started talking about you can't make a patient do things. You can't change a person. You can't force a person. So I really do want you to understand that you do the best you can. And one of the hardest parts about feeling responsible and wanting to help people is recognizing that sometimes you have to wait for the penny to drop, as my British friends say. You have to wait for them to put together the fact that they need help. And it's not going to go well if you don't allow for that to happen. Obviously, people collapsing, people unconscious, states of emergency, I'm not talking about that. But there is a challenge in the idea I want to be helpful to other people, that you can't always push it off on people. Sometimes you're waiting for them to come to you and ask for the help. And I have to tell you, it does have its funny aspect. I don't know if funny is the word I should use here, but I've had a lot of people over my lifespan since I became a psychologist say, I don't want to talk to you because I think you're going to assess me or analyze me or start recommending psychotherapy stuff to me. And let me explain to you, no, I don't walk down the street doing that to people. I also want to point out there are groups you can volunteer with that will help you with trainings for this kind of stuff. And again, please look into first aid at the Red Cross, would you, if you're in America? Okay, oh shoot. Oh yeah, I'm starting to think about the running. And so you can see where you can donate your used running shoes and your old medals there. There's a link in the show notes. The weather here has been back and forth. We had a heat wave, and then it got cold, and now it's slowly warming up. And I will explain why I'm not running this week. You're going to hear more about that in the blather. I'm getting ready, but I have one thing that is taking priority, and I'll come back to that. But my next race is June 20th, and that's the Sugar Daddy 5K. In the Fluffy books, I finished Tusks, Tails, and Tea Cakes. Yeah, I think she wrote that by hand. I don't think that's AI. But it is an argument for how annoying a good plot can be when the writer is not doing her homework. I don't know if this has actually come out in paperback form. I really doubt it's in hardback. But it's an ebook, and it's light and fluffy enough that if you want to listen to a book at night where you don't have to get too interested in the characters and it's very light, this is perfectly good for that. Am I looking forward to a sequel? No, I could care less. And that's really kind of terrible, but I really just don't care about the characters. Nothing in there grabbed me and held me. Now, I'm also reading Mary Bennett and the Beast of Rosings Park, and the exact opposite. I really just am enjoying all the characters, and I'm guessing who's doing this. Actually, I think I just hit what's doing this. And there's just a little bit of romantic suspense. I really doubt she's going to marry the guy who's looking like he might be the guy. It's just so much more interesting. Meanwhile, I started to listen to, what is it called? The Mud Puddle Manual of Natural Healing. Literally last night, so I'll come back to that. But it's rather adorable. I am rather enjoying it and very original. So I'll come back to that. Meanwhile, something I really like, well, it's going to be rolled in with the blather, and that is taking classes for my profession online. And I will really just come back to that, I think, more in the blather, because that overlaps into a few places in my show notes here. So I don't want to keep repeating myself. She said repetitively. She said redundantly. There we go. I also like my bundle of ice resistance patterns. Please also consider donating to the links in the show notes. There's a link for people impacted by ice. There's a link for the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota. And there's a link to many other links at Crafters Helping Minnesota. Project Back episodes on Proton, I believe I'm still carrying 201 to 250 of the new series. Green fingers, still weeding. My rosemary plants died, not my big bush. My original rosemary shrub is thriving in the front yard. I never would have thought that thing would have survived our winter. Oh no. That plant is ginormous. It's a giant shrub. It's flowering like crazy. It's spreading. That ground is hard as concrete. It doesn't seem to be bothering that rosemary. But I planted the 2 little rosemaries. They didn't make it. I planted the 2 little peppermints. One died. Actually, it looks like something ate it. And the other is alive and well and starting to spread. And the creeping thymes are doing okay. And the autumn sages are doing okay. I'm going out and trying to water people most days. So I'm really just working my way down the front yard doing 10 minutes of weeding most days. I have skipped a few days because I have other things going on, which I'll get to. Put a lid on it. Nothing big this week, just keeping pace. Tonight we had a roast chicken. My husband put spices on the skin of it to make it a bit hot. And I took the bones and stuck them in my pressure cooker. So even as we speak, I am making bone broth. And the process on that, again, I just put it on manual for 60 minutes and then I let it naturally depressurize. And then I will let it cool overnight in the cooker. And tomorrow I will strain it and put the broth in Tupperwares in the freezer. Just a reminder, whenever you have roast chicken or any roast bird, duck, turkey, doesn't matter. It's a really good opportunity to get some free stock, chicken stock or whatever. Let's get on to the blather. Well, Thursday was a big one. I have been fighting since I went to the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference last December to get the online classes and to get credits for the live classes I took. I have been doing this through the organization that runs it, HMP, and through Evolution itself. And it's been a nightmare. I could not get through to get credited for my 6 hours of live ethics class. I could not get through to get the online classes. I have tried everything, begged everybody, spent weeks. Finally, and I do blame myself for this, I went back to all my browsers and I said, try them all. Now, I had been trying on Safari on my full-size iPad because I was told that would work. Didn't work. Tried it on an iPad mini, didn't work. To my absolute shock, it worked on my iPhone. I tried adjusting screen sizes, orientation, only works on the iPhone. But the breakthrough was I went over to my DOS laptop and got onto the browser there, which is Google Chrome, and it worked perfectly, but it did that because I have a giant screen. It's not showing up well on the small laptop screen. So I can't tell you the relief. Now, I believe, but I'm not sure, I have until May to pick up classes. So I immediately threw myself into all the classes and the lectures. The goal is 26 hours at least. And so far, I believe I'm at 19 hours out of 26 since last Thursday. As I record this, it is Tuesday, April 7th, 2026 at 8:36 p.m. In other words, I'm just walking around plugged into these things, listening, and I can do it on my iPhone, although I can't do it on my train trips because we lose the ability to stream on the train. We get out of internet range on the train. But at home, I am just sitting down and consistently doing it. Today is Harville Hendricks Day. I am just listening to all this stuff about imago, couples therapy. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's just great, but it's good stuff. So I started that on Thursday, and I'm working my way through the first 26 units, and hopefully I will go back and get all the units I can. I don't need as many as I'm getting. I think I max out in my requirement something like 18 units. But it is my philosophy, if I pay $700 for a live event and then all the online streaming, I will sit through as much of it as I can before they shut it down. Because why would you pay for all this wealth and only use part of it, you know? So I am cranking my way through that very, very happily. The good news is they have the online recordings of the ethics class I took live. So I can go back to those and run them and then collect those 6 units, which is great. We have a requirement now. We used to have 6 units required at the time I signed up for this, but now we're only required to do 4 hours of law and ethics every 2 years and 4 hours of cultural diversity or I forget what else they're calling it, but cultural diversity or something else. Whatever they're calling it, I've got to go pursue that because evolution isn't good on cultural diversity, trust me. But nonetheless, I've gone from needing 36 hours to getting myself down to needing those 4 hours on cultural diversity, and I'm very, very happy about that. On Saturday, we celebrated the beloved husband's birthday, and we just all went down to LA and had a blast. We took the train down to the Museum of Contemporary Art, the branch that's in Japantown, or Little Tokyo. And it's right behind the Japanese American Heritage Museum, which I am looking forward to opening again. I'd like to see that again, too. But it's a relatively small display area, and they had a display on monuments. And the display was about the effect that monuments have on the viewer, and they were focused on responses to the monuments relating to the American Civil War. And I walked in and I saw the first item that was slightly outside the display space, and it was rather bloody, and I said, okay, this is too much like work. And I thought, that is a shame because I really do want to see this, but it is just going to be really disturbing and depressing, and I think the point's been made for me. I am the person who got in trouble in 5th grade for telling my wonderful history teacher that I thought Robert E. Lee should have been hanged as a traitor. By the way, that's a view I've never changed. I was talked down. He was such a gentleman, blah, blah, blah. That man is responsible for the death of thousands of Union soldiers. Okay, so anyway, I walked in with my son and my husband, and I said, I got to stop. And I turned right, and I went into the reading room, which had computers that you could enter in your responses to a survey about the display. That was nice. But the reading room is a treasure. I just started taking pictures of all the bookshelves because what a reading list. They had a ton of books on display, and I mean a ton, 200 titles, something like that, on display relating to this whole display. Really great, relating to this exhibit. And I don't mean the catalog of the exhibit, which you could buy up in their gift shop. I mean just various books talking about the take of Americans on the American Civil War. Just amazing. So I took pictures of all that and said one of my projects is to start developing that into a reading list if I can't find it on their website. I have not yet searched. So then I got up and I felt bad and I walked out and I thought, well, this looks safe. There's a pile of metal ingots and you can see that picture in the show notes. What is this? And it made my day because in front of the State House in Richmond, Virginia, there was a giant statue of Robert E. Lee as their state's hero. And that's been taken down and it was dismantled. And I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased. And then it was destroyed. And what I was looking at, those ingots, they melted down the statue and made them into ingots. And next to it, you can just see there's a little oil drum. That's kind of the sludge they got as a byproduct. And further to the right, there is a part of the monument base that was spray painted with anti-Confederate messages. Thank you, whoever did that. So I have to say, this made me happier than I can tell you. And they asked in the survey, if you could add anything to this exhibit, what would you add? And my answer was, I'd go to this display of the ingots. I would spray paint in the words, "Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord," which is the battle hymn of the Republic written during this American Civil War about Union victory. And I was so happy to see this. So I did get up and go around and see the rest of the display. It is wonderful. It's very, very well done. And very intelligent, thought-provoking, and moving. So I'm so glad we did this. Then we hopped back on the Metrolink train to Glendale, and we went to Kura, K-U-R-A. That's my sushi restaurant with the conveyor belt. We pigged out like there's no tomorrow. I mean, we just all cut loose, and I have no regrets. I was a little shocked at the time and then realized, no, this is exactly what we should do. And then we went clothing shopping for my beloved son because he really needed to refresh some clothes. So we went over to Old Navy on the street that runs behind the mall, Brand Boulevard. It runs to the east of the Glendale Galleria and the Americana area. And there's a lot of less upper end stores there. And so we went to Old Navy, and that was worth doing. So yeah, I have to admit, we spent a lot, and it's a little over budget, but it was very good to do. It needed to happen. It needed to happen, and that felt really good. Then we diverted to Cheesecake Factory, got half a cheesecake, and that was my beloved husband's birthday cheesecake. You can see him blowing out the wonky sparkler candles at the top of the show notes. And then Sunday, classes. I just sat down and I took classes, and I have to admit, this is why I didn't run or do anything else. I glued myself to my big laptop and its bigger screen on my desk in my office, and I just watched class after class. I'm deeply happy, but the e-bike arrived Saturday while we were out. FedEx just left it in the driveway. I'm glad we're in a remote area, I must say. And the e-bike came. And so Sunday, the beloved son and I began assembling it. And you can see a picture of it in all its blue glory. It is an electric bike. That's the word electric with no E in the beginning. Electric bike, foldable. I believe it's an XP4. And there it is. And it also has a cargo rack, and you can't really tell, but on that front frame, that is a folding lock that is attached there. So it's very, very nice. The cargo rack, and we have a front basket. I have yet to put them on. We cannot get the seat to be stable. It keeps falling down and twisting. So we have not been able to tighten that enough to get what we want. However, we are working on it, and it is there. It comes about 90% assembled, and they give you the world's clearest assembly and unboxing video. That is truly impressive. It's very long. It goes over everything, including all the safety checks, which is where I am now. I'm doing the safety checks on it. In the meantime, I have to ride it, but we haven't gotten that far yet because I'm too busy this week with patients. But in the show notes, you will find the links to the various LGBTQIA plus lifelines and to the community resources that I favor for things you might want to buy as add-ons to your craft work, and to the links about staying informed on ICE and getting help if you have to go to immigration court. You can see the calendar of upcoming events. And finally, Minerva gets the last word. Minerva would like you to know that she is officially a therapy cat. We figured this out when I read the latest news atrocities. And it's been a very difficult week. If you're not American and you're listening to this, let me tell you, it's been a tough week here. But what am I saying? It's probably been a tough week for all of you because of the things going on here. And I'm very sorry about that. And so I became very stressed. And I found that every time I got worked up, I would get 20 pounds of fluffy black cat in my lap. And I have to say, I have joked about her being a therapy cat, but I have realized she is. It's not easy for her because she's so fuzzy. So she overheats in my lap. Also, she prefers when I wear a skirt because it's like a big sling she can lie in, as opposed to just lying on my legs in tights. And I have been wearing a lot of tights without a skirt this week. It's just the mood I'm in. The patients can't tell. But I am surprised because it isn't a joke. She is taking her role as my therapy cat seriously. Now, what is she really doing? She is tuned into me enough that she can tell when I'm upset. And so she is climbing into my lap when I am upset and rubbing her head against me and purring and just generally trying to be nice. Now, this is still Minerva. She has hypoesthesia, which means, among other things, her back is highly sensitive. If I pet her too much, it literally causes her pain. And her signaling for that is not always clear to me. I do think she's trying to signal me, and sometimes I miss it. So I do have to be careful when she's in my lap. She is not a sort of cut loose and cuddle therapy cat because you can hurt her. Well, she's a cat. I mean, she's only 20 pounds. I mean, yeah, you can hurt anybody that small in your lap. So nonetheless, I have realized that Minerva is living a very vexed life as a therapy cat. She does consider herself on the payroll. She does demand treats as pay at night. And if I don't go in and get her the treats, she does sit on my desk and systematically knock everything off it. You can see a picture of her sitting on my desk, shrewdly considering what she would like to knock off next. If you're really paying attention, you will see a picture of Sunnybank, the house that used to be there, behind her. And above her, you will see my marathoning medals, because I'm showing off. But the important thing is Minerva has nominated herself as my comfort and joy. And that is because we are a community. And when you take care of the distressed members of your community, you are taking care of individuals, both yourself and that person. We build the bonds of community by caring for individuals and understanding that that leads to them caring for us. And so we are in the community, and we all do better when we take care of the community. Having said that, everybody stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.